Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, and execs are changing the entire business landscape using emerging technology like data, AI, and automation. And before we dive into today's episode, for those of you guys that are struggling with go-to-market and execution and understanding that the playbooks that you've used to get you here are not going to get you where you need to go, we're happy to have a 15 or 30-minute conversation about where we think AI and some of the platforms that we work with fit in. There's links in the show notes, everyone. We're happy to talk to you. No pitch. We're here to help. But let's jump into today's episode. I think you guys are going to love this. I'm here with Hussain Al-Shorafa from Revic.ai. Hussain, thank you for joining us. I am really excited to talk to you today.
Same. I'm geeked for this conversation.
Yeah. Because the best part is we're talking before the podcast. You helped solve one of the biggest hurdles and the biggest issues that most clients that we talk to and most people watching are experiencing. So let's jump in and let's just talk about your background first and kind of what led you up to Revic.
Yeah, for sure. I started my career on the tech side. So I was a sysadmin before they had those titles, SRE before they had the title of SRE. Started on that journey, and then over time, basically moved over to the dark side. Basically, went to the sales side, SC all the way to sales guy.
Only the techies would say that's the dark side, right? Now that you're on this side, you're like, hey,
that's it. I'm part of the dark side now, so I'm pretty happy. Like Darth Vader, here we are.
Exactly.
But basically, the whole thing about sales, what's so powerful about it is you get closer to the customer and the business and 100%. The needs, and the whole motivation for me was to get closer to like solving business problems. And so I went through that journey, startups, and then big companies, EMC, Symantec, and then went to a couple of went back to startups because that's where I get most excited. Like I want to be building and creating. So went to,
we're the different hats, right? Just kind of getting your hands in. Yeah.
There's so much unknown, and you're just trying to figure things out as quickly as you possibly can, and you're doing the best you can, and you're getting all sorts of pressure to try to figure out faster. But I really enjoyed that. Like went to a couple of startups, we sold both. So super lucky to get some good outcomes for our investors. And then in that whole journey, just been watching this whole sales tech, marketing tech, sales world, and like how every year we seem to get further and further away from like the core value prop of a salesperson, which is like identify and solve customer problems. Like get me out of tools and I want to go do the thing that everybody hires, salespeople to do. And so that's where that was kind of the journey to get to like starting my own company. So like I've always just like loved the idea of solving business problems. And so that's why sales was kind of a natural place. And then, now watching like the sales tech, MarTech space, I'm like, man, we could do better as an industry.
Yeah, and it's so funny that I don't know if you see this, but Chase and I, because we're so in depth on this side, a lot of the platforms that we see come out are like you're like, so what? Like this is just recycled stuff. When I saw what you guys were doing, we got really excited, right? Like I know Chase was already geeking out behind the scenes of looking at it, going, "Hey man, this is good." So tell everybody about why you started Revic, what it is, and what problems you solve, and then we'll get into some really cool discussions.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of it is like informed from like my history, kind of working either leading sales teams or being part of sales, high performing sales teams, and like. There's a couple of things, and I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of the story lane, and I'll try to be succinct. But kind of there's one thing that like everybody gets confused by. There's sales strategy and sales execution, and the common pitfall people fall into. I would fall into this, and I've been part of organizations that fall into this, where they conflate bad strategy with poor execution. And so like sales always gets the blame for the revenue thing, but sales hyper dependent on product, on marketing, on all these other functions to execute. And so like, you kind of need this really symbiotic relationship. And so like I saw a lot of this breaking down both in companies that I've been part of, where like a lot of infighting between marketing, sales, product, and everybody's like, oh, it's sales execution is the problem. Maybe. But a lot of times it's not. Like, the product can be mismatched with the market, or marketing is mismatched with the product capabilities or what have you. And that all just shows
or the
up
audience is mismatched with it. Right? Exactly.
and so we said, hey, well, like we gotta go solve this problem. Like, internally we'd have these debates. We'd sit in hours and hours to figure out like what's our ICP, and like I would have a perspective, and my perspective was like, who could I talk to right now that would want this product? And that's different than like how marketing would think about it, which is like, who should I talk to in 6 or 9 months, like that would want the product in 6 or 9 or 12 months from now. And then products like thinking like, okay, what's the TAM that we should go after that makes it compelling for our company to go get money from investors? Those are all different levels or time horizons for figuring out what the sales revenue strategy. And we conflate those and say, okay, this is like, sometimes you'll be like, this is the TAM. Well, if the TAM is $2 billion and you're chasing a $10 million number, revenue goal, well, that's ridiculous. Like you basically focus your team on everything, which basically means it's focused on nothing.
Right.
So we basically said, hey, look, we got to go fix this execution problem, and we have to think about it as revenue strategy and revenue execution. Both of those are problems that need to be solved. Revenue strategy is like ICP and buying propensity and all that good stuff that people talk about. And then revenue execution is like, when the rep gets the list of accounts, how do I go prosecute those accounts?
100%. So enter Revic and tell everybody how you guys kind of think about that and how you help companies change that. Because as we were talking about before the podcast, and for everybody listening, right, especially you founders and CROs out there that are thinking about, your go-to-market strategy. And it's so funny, Hussain, I get so many of them that get defensive, right? Until they, hopefully they're watching the podcast and they're less defensive about this. I said this to you before, the playbooks that got you here are not going to, they're stopping, or they're on the downside. They're not going to work anymore. Right, it's we did the metrics the other day. It's 1.6 to 1.8 more expensive or more costly to get a customer today than it was just like 2 years ago. So think about that. That means the playbooks need to change, right? And again, let's enter Revic and how you guys can help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the space that I grew up on was the cyber market. Like cyber has like 8,000. It's a tough market. It's 8,000 startups selling to like 500 CISOs, the executive buyer, and that buyer is naturally skeptical because that's their job, is to be like suspicious of everything. And so like, that's the world that I grew up in, which is like, buyer doesn't want to talk to you, which is true everywhere, but like, it's like buyer doesn't want to talk to you. They're getting 100 cold calls a day. They're just getting inundated. And so, okay, so to your point, like the playbooks have to change. Those guys will respond if it's like pinpoint perfect. And pinpoint perfect means like you gotta know everything about them in order for them to be like, okay, I'm gonna react to this. They read everything. We know that they read everything, because like when you get to the executive ranks, like you're reading all communication, all those pieces. But like there's a few things, I guess, when we think about like solving problems for customers, we one of the things we spent a lot of time thinking about is like, you kind of have this two worlds. You have all this information that the company accumulates and learns from, and then you have a leaky bucket, meaning like your sales team churns every 3 to 4 years. It's a net new sales team, right? And so if you think about
a metric that they very rarely track, right? If ever.
And it's like for me, I was predominantly an enterprise sales leader. The true time to productivity for an enterprise salesperson is like 18 months. That's when you got them to peak productivity. But 18 months that's a long time, and you're probably going to lose. You're basically just refreshing the organization. And so like the classic way is like, we're going to enable people. Well, yeah, sure, maybe that works, but like you're learning way faster than you can enable, and people are churning out too quickly. So we were basically saying, hey, look, there's got to be a way to take all this tribal knowledge, all this institutional, all this information, and turn it into a strategic asset, and then use that to start to solve problems in a way that just like fits into the workflow. Like, hey, where should we focus? You could ask the question. Revic will tell you, like, here's where you should focus. What should we do about this? Hey, and we're not saying we have the answer. Like a lot of our peers in the sales tech space will be like, no, you got to do it this way or that way or this way. Our argument to the marketplace is like, you got a ton of salespeople that are testing and iterating messaging and strategies. And the best companies, what they do is they learn from one sales rep and disseminate it instantly to everybody else. And that's how we've been thinking about the problem.
And see, I love that. And one of the things that we've talked about is when you have your key sales folks, right? And this is just one use case of this, right? If they measured their productivity and their sales close rate, right, of their best closers versus their, or best salespeople versus not, right? It's a big gap usually, right? Usually, the 80-20 rule or 90-10 rule is that you have 1 or 2 on your team out of 10 that are just rock stars, right? But to your point, if you could disseminate all the conversations and what makes them successful, right? There's another lever that you can do to level up the other ones, because to your point, what they don't track is how long that 18 months to bring a new salesperson up to speed. Why not make the ones you have on staff better and level them up, right? And I think that that's one of the things you're talking about is how do we not only give them better at bats, right, through better data and better, targeting through the TAM, but also help understand what some of the best salespeople are doing versus the lower ones to help them get there. Am I on the right track there?
There's nuance to it, right? And so there's this, I'll challenge a little bit of it, but I also kind of adjust some pieces and to kind of really double click on some of the other ideas that you're just presenting. Yeah. There's this like belief that you could take a C player and make them an A player, or a B player. I'm not sure that's it. Yeah. That's a question. Like we challenge that concept. Like, you can take people that have the right potential, the right aptitude, and unlock them, right? That's for sure. So you can take some C, some B. Like at first I was probably a B minus sales rep, and I had some great leadership that coached me and developed me, and maybe I was an A, maybe not, but sometimes I like to think I was, but the people I work for would probably attest to, hopefully the same, but maybe not. But you can do that if somebody's driven and smart enough and motivated. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. But for most of them, you can't. And one of the things we do know is 10% of your revenue, 10% of your people generate 70-80% of your revenue. Clary had a statistic about this. HubSpot had a statistic. There's a bunch of sources that validate that that's true. Our whole thinking is how do you take a top tier salesperson and just take out 20 or 30 or 40% of the mundane or the BS work that they have to do, and to really unlock them? And how do you, if you have, I'm going to go, 2000s football, if you have Tom Brady, you don't figure out how to reduce the reliance in the offense on Tom Brady. No, you figure out how you maximize Tom Brady every way possible. And so that's what we think about. So that's one side of it. The second side, which I think everybody kind of I'm guilty of this, but all reps are not equal. Every rep has an A in one situation is a B in another situation. And so there's this idea that you kind of have to start to match the reps to the situation or the environment. When I was a rep, I thrived in taking over customers that hated our product, hated the company. I was really good about spending some time, taking all the punishment that comes with it, and then just turning them around. That was my special skill. Other reps are just really great, and in 30 seconds, you just feel like they're your best friend. You trust them. You want to have a conversation. Those are all different skills, and I think that's one of the other things that we kind of conflate. And so, yes, you can take a bunch of people and elevate their performance by placing them differently. But there's also this idea, especially with AI, hey, maybe we can take our top 10% and really amplify them so that they can generate even more revenue. We can grow even faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that. And I think one of the things that we always say about AI being digital coworkers is they can 3, 5, sometimes 10x someone's productivity by just getting rid of the stuff they hate to do because it's mundane, repetitive, and nothing's worse sometimes than writing follow-ups and some of that stuff that you can do and at least get 80% of that grunt work done to where that person's more enjoyable. But to your point, you unlock an A player on the sales side, your revenue definitely takes off.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you think how am I using a lot of the tools? I use conversational recorders, and that gives me here's the summarization, and then that goes right to product whenever there's a feature different, all that stuff, instruments and automate all of it. There's no, why am I sending this email to you don't even need to talk to me. And if you want to reference information, it's all there. And so companies like Gong have done a great job of capturing that as a key value thing. I think most jobs, we can all admit, most of the stuff we do is mundane and probably better for machines to do, and we should just do the deeply creative and innovative or the deeply human type of thing. In the sales world, for us, both of those come together. A new sales strategy, some of the things that I would do, I failed 7-8 times before I got one thing that succeeded, but it was that iteration And going through that process, AI enables that. So I can iterate faster, come up with better ideas much quicker. That's awesome. But I ultimately still have to execute, be like, you know what? Both of these seem like okay ideas, or, they could blow up in my face, but I'm going to take the risk and go for it because like intuition tells me something's interesting about this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agreed. Totally agreed. So tell me what you're seeing, the shift in the industry, because I think that most of our audience, that's kind of what their biggest fear is like, they're not seeing it as clear, right? And yet you got a ton of customers that you're seeing it and you're helping. So talk to us about kind of what you're seeing across this.
For sure. I think the amazing thing about, and I'll talk, I think specific to AI, is that the right?
Well, we can layer in AI,
in
absolutely. Yeah, just in general,
okay.
But yeah.
I think there's one big, in the revenue generation side of the equation, there's one big thing that like everybody's kind of come to this realization, which is like, hey, we don't actually know how to sell. And that sounds like offensive on so many levels. Like if you told me that, I'd be like, what? Like I'd just be like, you're ridiculous. When everybody's buying, you actually didn't have to be good at selling. You didn't actually know who was good at selling, who was bad at selling. Like I've been fortunate or unfortunate enough, I'm old enough that like I've gone through 3 down cycles and I've seen how much better you get. Like real selling happens when, the dot-com crashes, dot-com bubble bursts, and like economies,
the financial meltdown,
financial recession. Like, I was in New York when that happened. And like all those accounts like Goldman and Lehman and Bear Stearns, like they're falling apart. Like their business is at risk. Like, so if you're going to get a deal done, you're going to have to really adjust to like their situation and figure out how do you like map to like really deep problems that they have. And that forces an elevated level of selling. Like there's a guy that I just remember, this was when I was at EMC, this is probably 2002, 2003. Basically, everybody does ROI calculators and justification for the deal that they're working on. This guy started doing ROI calculators to prove the past value delivered and use that to validate why they should trust him. And then he could sell way more product. Right. And he basically came up with a strategy because like every company was like, what can we cut? What can we cut? And he's like, no, don't cut any of mine because we're delivering the value. We're actually delivering more. And so I think one of the things that's happening is like people are starting to realize, hey, I've perhaps underinvested or underestimated how good my revenue organization is. So everybody's now dialing back in, and good classic principles are coming in, which is like, let's focus more. Let's deeply understand our buyer journey, our customer, the value, the pain points. Like, let's go back to basics.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that will genuinely work. And that is across the core functions, like that's product, that's marketing, that's sales. All 3 of those functions have to be hyper dialed in, very aligned in order to execute that kind of a thinking. So we're seeing that across the board. Obviously, it helps us because we started with the ICP as a core value thing that we're talking to customers about. But like, everybody's kind of shifting back to like basics. Like let's get sales right. Let's get execution and the strategy right.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're seeing it too with our clients, and it's amazing how right and on point you are about getting back to the basics. Is they realize their execution needs a lot of work, and they're trying to figure out where different things fit in. So I think the next logical question I would definitely ask you is, where does AI fit in to help this? Obviously you have it embedded in everything you guys do.
I think there's a class of like argument that's saying, oh, you should use AI for this, or you should use AI for that or that. I think it's such a disruptive technology that AI, it will be pervasive across the entire organization. And so the organizations that I think are really, that we've been partnering with or have seen execute well, they basically have started with this idea of like, okay, we need to have an AI strategy across our organization. But with the understanding, if you only just did the strategy side, it's going to fail because you're going to end up with like too big of an effort and initiatives and work that has to happen. So you also have to connect it to very tactical things. So like we're working with a customer right now that's like, hey, we have 150,000 renewals that we do a year. That's a lot. And it's a very manual process and it's time intensive and there's a lot of data. The data is everywhere. It's not whatever. And so like, hey, is there a way we can start to like instrument this and simplify it? That's a great use case for AI. Like we know there's work that needs deep thinking, but a bunch of renewals are like, hey, just send out the quote, see if they're going to be interested in a 10% uplift. We know that that's a process. The hard part is deciding what falls into that bucket and what needs deep, intensive, like human time to like figure out how to uplift. Because like right now, all 150,000 are equal, but they're not actually equal to the business. So getting really specific is good, but having a strategy that's at the C-suite level and then picking off use case after use case, like burning pain, what is a really manual process that we can just like get rid of? And if we could wave a magic wand, like that's a big win. For us, everything we do is AI first, from dev all the way to sales.
That's fantastic. And so if someone like, talk to us about, because I get a lot of folks who will be like, yeah, hey, we get it on the dev side. Talk to them about like kind of what you guys think about and do being AI first on the sales side. Because I think that our audience is probably thinking, all right, that's really interesting, Hussain. Like, what do you mean by that?
I think the way we think about it, we spent some time basically dissecting the day of the life of a sales rep, and we use kind of benchmark numbers for like average deal and quotas and all that stuff, and we're like, okay, what are the things they do a lot of throughout the course of a quarter that take a lot of time? Proposal building. This is a great example of like, marketing creates a fantastic template, and every rep is responsible for taking that and then codifying it and sending it out to the customer. Right. So now there are two processes. Marketing has to update this proposal and keep it current. Most of the organizations, there are times there where they do a great job of that. A lot of times that it always lags. Right. So that's one problem. And two, the reps will sometimes forget to fill in the highlighted yellow box that goes out to a customer, or they just mistype something or whatever. Like this whole thing. Why is a rep doing it? We can take the recordings from the transcripts, from the conversational recordings. We can look at the revenue history. We could do all that stuff with AI pretty quickly. The rep shouldn't be doing that. Who cares? You could drop it into ChatGPT. Yeah, obviously it doesn't have insight into your data, but that's a simple example of like a really manual, time-consuming task.
Probably took hours, right?
Takes hours.
Yeah.
To put together. To us, that's instrumental for AI.
Right.
And really, the more important thing is we've seen all these statistics. Salesforce publishes that every year. It hasn't changed, or actually it's gotten worse. 10 years ago, 60% of the sales reps' time was spent not selling. Now it's like 80%. That's the point to focus.
Wrong direction.
Let's go fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's flip that. If you can take a rep and instead of them spending 20% selling, this is not novel. Everybody knows this, right?
Right.
Everybody's been trying it. AI is actually the technology that enables this.
Yes.
Which is now if we flipped it, so 20% is not selling, 80% is selling, well, your A player just got 4x'd. That's a big difference.
Yeah. And if you think about it, your biggest metric on revenue growth is closing, right? So you up your close rate, or even better, you enable your A player, like you said, to sell more and use 40% more time. Your revenue impact is going to be noticeable, right? It's just common sense.
It's massive. It's massive on just that. Thinking about that alone is massive. The other thing to think about, or that we think about a lot and kind of when we talk to customers, is okay, when one rep modifies a proposal in a particular way and it lands, it creates that deal that was at risk now all of a sudden close. Every rep should have access to that information. And that becomes the major unlock for AI. So you're now people start talking about we went from chatbots and copilots to now everybody's talking about agentic AI. The next phase will be talking about context and memory. How do you make the AI smarter? And that's the hard part. And that's where we spend a lot of time thinking about that.
Yeah. And I definitely think that that's exactly what's going to happen is that's going to be the next frontier, and it's going to be game changing, right? Because that's where it can really do a lot more and shave off a lot more of that mundane stuff. So I already see where Revic fits in such a unique way and such a massively void, right, area where people, there's little pieces, but you guys think about the buyer's journey end to end. And I think that that's where a lot of teams are disconnected. So talk to me about, your outlook for Revic and how, kind of where you think you guys fit best, because I think there's lots of people going, wait, I need to talk to Hussain and his team.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing we think about most, the thing we're dialed in on the sales process, revenue process, is how do you create higher quality pipeline? That's what I spend all my time. My career and my history is most of the teams I've been part of, 80% of our pipeline we knew was BS. We had it for whatever, like that's like that shouldn't be a state because that creates fog for everybody in the organization. So for us, it's all about how do you create higher quality pipeline. There's two parts to that. There's the sales strategy or revenue strategy side, which is like where should we focus that will, when we create opportunity, it will be higher quality. So here, like we have one of our customers, 80% of their wins are coming out of the pool of accounts we're saying this is what your win zone is. And 58% of their losses are coming out from the accounts that we're saying you're going to lose these accounts. We're doing this before they even touch the account. That's really compelling for them. So they've shifted all territory builds where marketing focuses, where the SDRs focus is purely where Revic guides them. And then when they have like conditions where Revic's saying they're going to lose, there's a whole bunch of inspection and additional qualification to introduce to have a conversation saying, hey, should we really be pursuing this? Because like if we pursue this and we win it, that's actually not a great condition because that's the customer that's going to churn. And so that's the customer that's going to stress out engineering and product because they're going to ask for features all the time. So we focus on pipeline, building pipeline. We help customers figure out what their ICP is. The buying propensity, account scores elements so that marketing and sales can align on where should they focus. And then we start to help the sellers on the execution tactics. Here's a point of view. This is why this is a good account. This is how you approach the account. This is the people you should talk to. We basically work through that whole cycle.
That's massive. That is absolutely massive. And I really do think that is sorely missing in a lot of pipeline management and execution today. And our team sees that firsthand. So absolutely saying this is I like anytime we get into go to market, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. It's fantastic. We're definitely going to have you back, but tell everybody how to get in touch with you. Cause I think people need to explore working with your team, and Revic is such a perfect addition to empower having the right conversations. Cause everybody we talk to, right. And again, whether we're working with them or not on the podcast, it's my sales team don't get enough qualified sales conversations, right? And so you've already hit two of the major things. One is how your platform is going to help them. But two is how that they can use AI to take, which you kind of gave them some suggestions about how to take some of the mundane stuff off the plates of the key people in that process and let them work with more qualified conversations.
For sure. But this has been a lot of fun. I would happily join, and I know that we could go on for hours and hours. I'd love to continue the conversation. Best way to reach us, just h@revic.ai. That's revic.ai. That comes right to me. Happy to anybody on the audience, your audience will be very well taken care of and have a conversation. Happy to deep dive on stuff that's relevant to Revic or just AI in general. If anybody wants to reach out, so happy to do those things.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, honestly, you're like, I always love when we have folks on that have just, again, it's entrepreneur 101, right? You saw a hole in the market, right? You saw a need and a problem that everybody has or tons of people have, and you build a solution for it. And it's exactly why I know you guys are going to do phenomenal things, and we're going to be very much figuring out how to partner with you guys. Thank you so much for spending time with us, Hussain. I can't wait to get this one live. This is one that is near and dear to most of our founders' hearts. So it's great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Guys, that is exactly why we do this every day, is because we need to bring more and more light to things, platforms like Revic, and how it helps you empower your revenue growth, because every founder we talk to, this is number one on their list. And so, Hussain, I can't wait to see how your platform grows beyond belief. And guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. And it's exactly how we say, we tell you, this is how you future-proof your business, is to find solutions that are holes in your current process. So again, thanks to Hussain. Thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you on tomorrow's episode.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.